The salty breeze carried the scent of jasmine and ocean spray as I pulled into the gravel driveway of the Outer Banks beach house. After 3 years of postponing this trip, I finally made it. 37 years old, recently divorced, and desperately needing space to figure out what came next in my life. The rental agency had assured me the house would be empty, cleaned, and ready. My sister Lucy had recommended this particular property, a sprawling coastal home with weathered cedar shingles and panoramic views of the Atlantic. Perfect for someone who needed to disappear for 2 weeks and remember who she was before marriage consumed her identity. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk of my Honda, breathing in the humid North Carolina air. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. The main house looked exactly like the photos online wraparound porch, rocking chair swaying gently in the breeze, and windows that promised stunning sunrise views. The key was exactly where the property manager said it would be, hidden under a ceramic turtle by the front steps. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, immediately struck by the cool interior and the sound of waves crashing just beyond the dunes. The living room was spacious and airy, with comfortable furniture arranged around a stone fireplace. Coastal artwork adorned the walls, and everything smelled faintly of lavender and sea salt. This was exactly what I needed: a place to write, to think, to heal from the devastating end of my 12-year marriage to Tom. I dropped my bags in the master bedroom and decided to explore the rest of the house. The kitchen was fully equipped, the screened porch overlooked the ocean, and there were 2 additional bedrooms down a hallway. I'd planned to use one as a temporary office, somewhere I could spread out my laptop and notebooks, and finally start working on the novel I'd been talking about for years. The first guest room was empty and pristine, with a queen bed covered in white linens and seashell decorations on the dresser. But when I approached the second guest room at the end of the hall, I noticed the door was closed. That seemed odd. The rental company usually left all doors open for guests to see the full property. I turned the handle and pushed the door open, expecting to find another empty room. Instead, I found myself face to face with a young woman, maybe 25, sitting on the edge of the bed with a crying toddler in her arms. Next to her stood a boy who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, his dark eyes wide with fear. We all froze, staring at each other in complete shock. "Oh my God!" I whispered, my heart racing. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was." "Please don't call the police," the young woman said quickly, clutching the toddler tighter. Her voice carried a slight accent I couldn't quite place. "We're not supposed to be here. We needed somewhere safe." The little boy stepped protectively closer to her, and I noticed he was wearing clothes that looked like they'd been slept in for days. The woman's hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and there were dark circles under her green eyes that spoke of exhaustion and worry. "I'm Rachel," I said softly, trying to keep my voice calm despite my racing pulse. "This is my rental house. I'm not going to call anyone, but I need to understand what's happening here." The toddler's crying intensified, and the woman began rocking him gently. "I'm Mia," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is Tommy, and this is Gabriel." She nodded toward the older boy. "We've been staying here for 3 days. The property manager, he's my uncle. He said it would be empty for another week." My mind raced, trying to process this information. "Your uncle?" "Please." Gabriel spoke for the first time, his voice small but determined. "We won't bother you. We can leave if you want, but Mia says we can't go back home yet." There was something in the way he said it, the fear in his young voice, the protective way he stood near Mia, that made my chest tighten. I'd been expecting 2 weeks of solitude, but looking at these 3 strangers, I saw something I recognized. People running from something that had broken them. "You don't have to leave," I heard myself saying. "But we need to talk." That evening, after I'd helped Mia get the children settled with some soup I'd picked up from a local deli, we sat on the screened porch while Tommy napped and Gabriel played quietly with some seashells he'd collected on the beach. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded me why I'd always loved this stretch of coastline. But the beauty felt surreal given the circumstances. "My uncle Roberto manages about 12 properties along this stretch," Mia explained, wrapping her hands around a mug of tea. "He's been letting us stay in vacant rentals when we need to disappear for a while." "Disappear from what?" I asked gently. Mia was quiet for a long moment, watching Gabriel through the screen as he carefully arranged shells and patterns on the porch steps. "Gabriel's father," she finally said. "My brother-in-law, Richard. He has a problem with anger and alcohol, and the combination of the two." My stomach clenched. I'd suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way that hit too close to home. "Is Gabriel your son?" "My nephew. My sister Carmen died in a car accident 2 years ago. Richard got custody because he's Gabriel's biological father, but she trailed off, her voice catching. He's gotten worse since Carmen died. Much worse. And Tommy, he's mine. Different father, also not in the picture." Mia's laugh was bitter. "I've been living with Richard to help with Gabriel, trying to keep him safe. But last week, Richard came home drunk and started throwing things. He grabbed Gabriel by the arm so hard it left bruises. That's when I knew we had to get out. I felt a familiar rage building in my chest, the same feeling I'd had during the worst moments of my marriage, when Tom's verbal abuse had made me feel trapped and small. Have you contacted social services? The police? Richard is a police officer, Mia said quietly. And his father is a judge in our hometown. They have friends everywhere. The few times I've tried to report him, nothing happened. They all said it was just grief, that he needed time to heal. Gabriel looked up from his shells and caught us watching him. He gave us a small wave, and I waved back, my heart breaking for this kid who'd already lost so much. Where are you from originally? Little town in Virginia, about 4 hours from here. Richard doesn't know about Uncle Roberto's connection to these rental properties. Carmen never told him about this side of the family. Mia paused, then added, Uncle Roberto has been helping women and children get away from dangerous situations for years. He has a network of safe places. That's incredible, I said, genuinely impressed. But why did he rent the house to me if he knew you needed it? He didn't know. I called him in a panic last week after Richard. She touched her cheek unconsciously, and I noticed a fading yellow bruise near her jaw. Roberto was out of town, and his assistant handled your booking. When he got back yesterday and realized the mix-up, he was going to call and offer you a different property, but I begged him to let me talk to you first. I'm glad you did. Mia looked surprised. You are. I thought about my own journey to this beach house, running from the emotional wreckage of my divorce, seeking space to rebuild myself after years of feeling diminished and controlled. I came here to escape something too. Different situation, but I understand needing a safe place to figure out what comes next. That night, I lay in the master bedroom listening to the ocean waves and thinking about the strange turn my vacation had taken. I'd expected to spend 2 weeks alone, nursing my wounds and maybe writing a few chapters of the novel that had been living in my head for years. Instead, I was sharing the house with 3 people who needed sanctuary more than I needed solitude. Around midnight, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway and the sound of the kitchen faucet running. I found Mia standing at the sink, staring out the window at the moonlit ocean while she filled a glass with water. Can't sleep? I asked quietly. She turned, startled. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. Tommy's been restless. I think the change in environment has him confused. You didn't wake me. I've been having trouble sleeping for months. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking out at the waves crashing in the darkness. Rachel, Mia said finally, I want you to know that if this becomes too complicated, if you need us to leave, I understand. You didn't sign up for any of this. Neither did you, I replied. Neither did Gabriel. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of childish laughter coming from the beach. From my bedroom window, I could see Gabriel and Tommy playing at the water's edge while Mia watched from a beach chair, a genuine smile on her face for the first time since I'd met her. For the first time in months, I felt like I might be exactly where I was supposed to be. Over the next few days, we fell into an unexpected rhythm. Mia was an early riser, often making coffee before dawn and sitting on the porch to watch the sunrise. I'd join her with my laptop, finding that the peaceful morning hours were perfect for writing. Gabriel was fascinated by my work, asking endless questions about how stories were created. Are you writing about us? He asked one morning, peering over my shoulder at the screen. No, sweetheart. I'm writing about a woman who moves to a small town and opens a bookstore, I said, ruffling his sandy hair. But maybe someday I'll write about a brave boy who collects seashells and asks really good questions. Gabriel beamed at this, then grew serious. Do you think my mom would have liked your stories? The question caught me off guard. Mia had told me more about Carmen over the past few days, how she'd been a teacher, how she'd loved to read, how she'd always encouraged Gabriel's curiosity about everything. I think she would have, I said honestly, and I think she'd be very proud of how you're taking care of Mia and Tommy. Mia says Mom is watching over us, but I can't see her anywhere. My chest tightened. Sometimes the people we love show up in different ways, like how you have your mom's kind heart, or how you make Tommy laugh just like she used to make you laugh. Gabriel considered this seriously, then nodded and went back to his shell collection. That afternoon, while the boys napped, Mia and I walked along the shoreline. The beach was relatively empty, just a few joggers and people walking their dogs. The solitude felt healing in a way I hadn't expected. I've been thinking about what comes next, Mia said, picking up a piece of sea glass and examining it in the sunlight. We can't stay here forever, and I can't keep running from Richard. What are your options? I've been researching women's shelters in other states. There's a program in Oregon that helps relocate families fleeing domestic violence. They provide housing assistance, job training, legal support. She pocketed the sea glass. But it means starting completely over. New names, new identities. Gabriel would have to leave behind everything he's ever known. Would that be worse than going back? Mia was quiet for a long moment. Richard called Uncle Roberto's office yesterday. He's looking for us. He told Roberto's assistant that I kidnapped Gabriel, that I'm mentally unstable. But surely people know that's not true. You'd be surprised how convincing Richard can be when he needs to be. He's charming, respected in our community, and I'm just a sister-in-law with no legal claim to Gabriel. Her voice cracked slightly. I love that boy like he's my own son, but legally I have no rights. That evening, I found myself researching family law and domestic violence resources online. The legal complexities were staggering, especially in situations where one parent was deceased and the surviving parent was abusive. I also found myself thinking about my own situation differently. My divorce from Tom had been emotionally devastating but legally straightforward: no children, assets split fairly, clean break. I'd felt sorry for myself for months, but listening to Mia's story put my struggles in perspective. The next day, I called my sister Lucy. Rachel, how's your writing retreat going? Are you channeling your inner Virginia Woolf? Actually, it's gotten complicated, I said, and proceeded to tell her everything. Lucy listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. She was a family law attorney in Charlotte, and I could practically hear her legal mind processing the information. Jesus, Rachel, you've gotten yourself into quite a situation. I know it sounds crazy, but I couldn't just turn them away. I'm not criticizing you. I'm impressed, actually. Most people would have called the police and washed their hands of it. Lucy paused. Tell me more about the uncle's network. This Roberto guy. I shared what Mia had told me about Roberto's informal system of helping families escape dangerous situations. It's not uncommon, Lucy said. There are underground networks like this all over the country. Domestic violence organizations that work outside official channels because sometimes the official channels fail women and children. What would you do? Legally, I mean. In North Carolina, I'd start by getting Gabriel's statement about the abuse documented by a neutral third party. I'd file for emergency custody based on endangerment. I'd also look into whether there's any evidence that Richard's department has a pattern of ignoring domestic violence reports. Could Mia actually get custody? It's an uphill battle, but not impossible. Especially if there's documented abuse, and she can prove she's been Gabriel's primary caregiver since his mother died. Lucy was quiet for a moment. Rachel, I could make some calls. I know people who specialize in these cases. You would do that? For you? Of course. And for them too. No child should have to live in fear. That night, I presented Lucy's offer to Mia. We were sitting on the porch again, our nightly ritual, watching Gabriel and Tommy chase fireflies in the dunes. Your sister would really help us? Mia asked, her voice full of disbelief. She's already started making calls. There's a legal aid organization in Raleigh that takes cases like this. And Lucy thinks we might be able to get Gabriel's abuse documented in a way that would hold up in court. Mia was quiet for so long I thought she might not respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I haven't had anyone offer to help us in 2 years. Not really help, you know. People would say they were sorry about Carmen, or that they hoped things got better, but no one ever asked what they could actually do. Well, now you do. Why? She asked, turning to look at me directly. Why are you doing this? You don't even know us. I thought about how to answer that. Remember the first night, when you asked me not to call the police? You said you needed somewhere safe. Yes. I've spent the last year feeling unsafe in my own life. Not physically, like you, but emotionally. Psychologically. My ex-husband never hit me, but he found other ways to make me feel small and powerless. I watched Gabriel catch a firefly and carefully release it. I guess I recognize that feeling in you. And I know what it's like to need someone to believe that you deserve better. Mia reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. We still have to figure out how to make this work. Lucy arrived 3 days later with a colleague named Patricia Chun, no relation to anyone we knew, just a brilliant attorney who specialized in family law and domestic violence cases. Patricia was in her 50s, with graying hair and the kind of calm, competent presence that made you believe problems could actually be solved. She interviewed Gabriel gently, asking him to tell her about his life with Richard in his own words. Gabriel was shy at first, but Patricia had a gift for making children feel safe. By the end of their conversation, she had a clear picture of the escalating abuse and neglect. This boy has been protecting himself and others for far too long, Patricia told us privately that evening. But he's articulate, consistent, and his account is compelling. What are our options? Mia asked. Several. We can file for emergency custody here in North Carolina, arguing that returning Gabriel to Virginia would put him in immediate danger. We can also file a complaint against Richard's department for failing to investigate previous reports. Patricia pulled out a tablet and showed us a legal document. I've also been in touch with a colleague in Oregon. If the custody battle gets complicated, we might be able to relocate all of you through their witness protection program for domestic violence survivors. What does that mean exactly? I asked. New identities, job placement assistance, housing support. It's like entering witness protection, but for families fleeing abuse instead of criminal organizations. Mia looked overwhelmed. How long would all of this take? The emergency custody hearing could happen within a week. The broader case might take several months, but Gabriel would be safe during that time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked out to the beach and sat in the sand, listening to the waves and thinking about how dramatically my life had changed in just over a week. I'd come here to write and heal from my divorce. Instead, I'd become part of something much bigger and more important. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Mia approaching with 2 cups of tea. Couldn't sleep either, she asked, settling beside me in the sand. Too much to process, I admitted. This time last week, my biggest concern was whether I'd be able to write anything meaningful. Now I'm helping plan a custody battle. Do you regret it? Getting involved? I considered the question seriously. No. Actually, I feel more like myself than I have in years. For so long, I felt like I was just reacting to things that happened to me. Tom's moods, his criticism, his control. This is the first time in a long time that I've chosen to act instead of just react. You've saved us, Mia said simply. We've saved each other. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for the following Monday in a Raleigh courthouse. Lucy and Patricia had worked tirelessly to prepare our case, gathering medical records, interviewing Gabriel's teachers, and documenting every incident of abuse that Mia could remember. Richard showed up with his own attorney and a lot of righteous anger. He was exactly what I'd expected: tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of authoritative presence that probably made him effective as a police officer. He also had the practiced charm of someone who was used to being believed without question. But Gabriel was brave. When the judge asked him to describe his home life, he spoke clearly and honestly about being afraid, about the bruises, about hearing Richard scream at Mia in the middle of the night. His testimony was devastating in its simplicity. The judge granted temporary custody to Mia, with supervised visitation for Richard, pending a full investigation. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. 3 months later, I was back at the beach house, but this time by choice rather than escape. My novel was nearly finished, a story about unexpected connections and the courage it takes to rebuild your life. Mia and the boys were living in a small apartment in Raleigh now, close to Lucy and Patricia's law office. Gabriel was enrolled in a new school where he was thriving, and Tommy had started talking in full sentences. Mia had gotten a job at a local nonprofit that helped other families in situations like theirs. Richard had eventually agreed to sign over his parental rights in exchange for avoiding criminal charges related to the abuse. It wasn't the ending any of us had hoped for when this started, but it was the one that kept Gabriel safe. "You know what's funny?" Mia said during one of our weekly phone calls. "I spent so long trying to save Gabriel that I forgot I was worth saving too." "What do you mean?" "I mean I was so focused on protecting him from Richard that I didn't realize I was also protecting Richard from consequences. I was enabling the whole system by staying quiet and managing the situation instead of fighting it." "You were surviving," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Maybe, but I like this version of myself better. The one who fights." I understood exactly what she meant. The woman who had found 3 strangers in her rental house and decided to help them was different from the woman who had arrived at that house, planning to hide from her problems. I was different too, stronger, more purposeful, more connected to something larger than my own pain. That evening, I sat on the porch with my laptop, writing the final chapter of my novel. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, and I could hear the sound of children laughing somewhere down the beach. My phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Gabriel wants to know if you're writing about the brave boy who collects seashells yet." I smiled and typed back, "Tell him that story is next." Sometimes the vacation you need isn't the one you planned. Sometimes you don't find peace by running away from the world, you find it by running toward the people who need you to be brave. The house felt different now, filled with the echoes of laughter and late-night conversations and the memory of 3 people who had trusted me with their story. When I opened that guest room door, I thought I was discovering an invasion of my solitude. Instead, I discovered who I was capable of becoming.